One question. You have to wear this. Yeah, I should come on. Since you have to wear this. Oh. Some of the pressure shirt really shy. Your phone on mute, on vibrate.
Even vibrator, turn off the volume fully.
Yeah.
Oh, is the
Welcome, everyone. Thank you all for joining us. This is episode 12 of Real Estatically Speaking and More. I'm your host, Karen Cook, and on this show, we seek to invite other professionals to the relevant that are relevant to the real estate industry to educate you on various aspects of the business. Now, this week's topic is tips from the quantity surveyor. And I'll go right into the quote. And this week's quote is, don't think of cost, think of value. I'm going to invite those of you who may have questions kindly to place your questions in the chat and we will see how best we can answer during this broadcast, or we can answer them as soon as possible thereafter. Now I'll go right into the introduction of our guest speaker. And our guest speaker is none other than Mr. Fitzroy Donaldson. Mr. Donaldson is the owner of FGW Donaldson Construction, Project Management, and Quantity Surveyors Company. And he has a wealth of knowledge that he would like to share with us on this week's broadcast. So I'm going to ask you all, please stay tuned and we'll go right into the question and answer segment. Or if I'll ask Mr. Donaldson, would you like to tell us a little bit about your background just before we go into the question and answer segment? Hold on a moment, please. All right, go right ahead, Mr. Donaldson.
Yes, good evening all and welcome to, I must say congrats, Ms. Karen, for having launched such a program. it's well needed in my opinion, because most people actually are not aware of the various professions within the industry. And I can tell you from experience, it seems as if most people know nothing about a quantity surveyor. The moment they hear the word surveyor, they think, oh, that man that look through that thing. No, the man that looks through the thing is a land surveyor. So, countless times you have to explain exactly what a quantity surveyor is, or the functions of a quantity surveyor. Okay, I graduated from Cast, which is currently UTech, from back in 1980. That makes it, what, 42 years in the business. Attended Cast actually on a government scholarship, and did the program quantity surveying. Back then it was a 3 years, very intensive program. Today it is, I think, a 4-year program. It's very extensive. Of course, having the experience that I have, gone through 40 odd years in the business, and the diversification of the industry today, it's best you can't sit around and say, hey, I'm a QS now. At least not me. I have gotten involved in all aspects of construction. Thus, I've added quantities, project management to my portfolio.
All right. Thank you for that background. So we'll go right into the Q&A segment. Sir Donaldson, what are the requirements to become a quantity surveyor?
Well, it starts with, of course, going to high school, getting your, oh gosh, what do you call it? Well, back then I'm familiar with the GC.
So these days it's a CSEC, and of course, your the Cape.
Okay. So, okay, that's where it starts, and then you go into, let me say locally then for Jamaica's purposes. You go into, of course, UTech, and you register for the quantity surveying program. And that's pretty much where it starts. You graduate, you get out there, and also there is the Institute of Quantity Surveyors, the Jamaican Institute of Quantity Surveyors. Upon graduation, you register and become a probationer, and there's a requirement. You go through that until you become a, let me say, fully qualified, fully registered, after doing, various tests, exams, etc.
Okay. So what does the job of the quantity surveyor entails?
All right. In essence, the job of the quantity surveyor, I refer to us as the accountants of the industry. We work with numbers, we work with estimates, we do, well, the core essence is element is doing what's called a bills of quantities for a project. For example, let's say you want to build a house. You get your architect to draw your plan, do your designs, and of course, your next step is really engaging a quantity surveyor, because of course, and there's a Bible quote, those of you who are in the Bible, which man sets out to build a house without first counting the cost?
Indeed.
Right. So you start there, and you develop your budget from that, get your drawings, and you measure off in details all your concrete, steel, earthworks, everything. I might say from a pin to an anchor, from start to finish, and that develops your budget. That is presented to your financial institution, National Housing Trust, the banks, etc. And of course, they, disperse a loan against that. Along with that, let's say, for example, you're doing a development. Let's say like a housing scheme, multifamily development. You So you're a developer, you want to do that for profit, you engage the services of a quantity surveyor to develop what's called a developer's budget. You do your bills of quantities and you plug in the various elements, your interest rates, your professional fees, your land cost, and all elements, your legal fees in terms of selling back, stamp duty, taxes, everything that will be relevant to the costing, your approvals. You have to submit your drawings to the various municipalities for approval, and all those costs, every cost counts. And from that, you develop your developer's budget. So you come down to say a cost per unit for building and selling this particular development or this particular unit. You add your markup, whatever that markup that developer might choose, and you come up with a cost. So you don't go into a project just foolhardily. You go into it with informed knowledge to ensure that you attain your desired results.
Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
And when is it necessary to get a quantity surveyor's report? I know you may have answered some of that already, but
Well, pretty much, of course, you yourself, the client, would want to know, hey, okay, I have this house to build. You want to know exactly what that house is going to cost you. And as well, majority of people would need to go to the bank to get, or any financial institution to get that loan to build, of course, to build do your project. So, of course, once you are engaging in building, it is highly recommended that you actually engage the services of a quantity surveyor. And early on in the game, very early on, you do that. It's unfortunate that I've come to the stage now where there are so many clients who engage a quantity surveyor after they have gotten into trouble. What do I mean by that? They come with us their not a story, they come with their tales. Hey, I started this construction and the contractor said, boy, he could build this for $5 million. I've expended $6 million and I'm nowhere near completion. What do I do? Well, my answer is, what should you have done? The quantity surveyor would, of course, do his bills of quantities, develop his budget, and also negotiate the contract on your behalf with your contractor of choice and develop a contract. So there's extensive legal work behind the services of a quantity surveyor as well. You have various forms of contracts that you use. Our local construction industry has what's called a CIC or JIC form of contract, which is a basic contract which spells out the terms, conditions under which this contract is to be executed. And without that, you're begging for trouble.
wow.
Without that, you are begging for trouble. Again, too many times I get involved, or people want to engage, quantity surveyor services after they have gotten into trouble. And unfortunately, it's a little too late then.
Wow.
Because the legal industry in Jamaica, nobody wants to get entangled in that. You can be entangled in that for years upon years upon years.
Man.
To avoid that, you engage the services of a quantity surveyor upfront.
Okay. What other purpose does that report, the quantity surveyor's report, serve?
Well, other than getting your financing in place, of course, it gives you that feel for the value of your property. In essence, it gives you that feel. And in general terms, you're going to build a house, you need to know what that cost is. Now, there's another aspect that the quantity surveyor does not necessarily engage in, and that's the, say, a valuation. What do I mean by that? Okay, you have a house, you built a house on the land, let's say let me say Portmore, for example. You bought your land, you build your house, you might have spent $10 million in building your house. Now, in doing that, you would have built up equity within that portfolio. So what the valuator does now, who again is not a quantity surveyor, but he is a valuator, what he does is he takes all that information, your construction cost, your land cost, and he looks at the whole demographics of the area, the industry, and he develops what's called it's a valuation report of what your actual project is. So that's another aspect of it.
Okay. So that's, I guess, would be used for incomplete structure.
Well,
Or is it a generally speaking?
generally speaking.
Okay.
Generally speaking. And let me give an example. I was called by a prospective client today. It's an issue of family land. So I guess years ago, daddy gave a cousin permission, hey, you can build something on the property. Now, I don't know if they did not spell out in general terms or in details to the relative, hey, don't put a permanent structure, put, I guess, something, a temporary structure, something that can be removed. But anyway, years later, daddy passed on, and now siblings coming up. And yes, daddy did give you permission. But what they did, they negotiated a deal in that cousin now is supposed to come up with the materials that he used in building the structure. So now I'm going to have to go back through, do physical measurements because there are no plans, and come up with the amount of materials that would have been used in that structure. And the agreement is that the family will now reimburse the relative for the material cost only.
So in that case, would that be the cost you would have expended at that time or at present value?
No, it is at present value. Because of course we know, construction costs changes daily.
Right.
Today I went to buy a ton of steel. I bought 1 ton a month ago, and it's up by $30,000 per ton.
Wow.
So yes, the replacement would be at today's materials cost.
Okay. All right. Whenever a quantity surveyor is off target with the cost computed to complete a building or renovation project, what recourse does the client have, especially if prices are stable?
That's a good question. In instances, some clients will only engage you if you have professional indemnity insurance. What does that mean? Okay, you have engaged my services and I say your building is gonna cost $10 million. And I'll say, okay, you can add 10 or 15% as contingencies to say it might go over by that amount. But lo and behold, your project ends up at $15 million. Is the quantity surveyor liable? Yes, he is, because you hired him or her, and you depended upon that person's professional competence, if I might say. You're leaning on their professional capability or capacity to guide you.
Indeed.
Now, what happens now when you have your professional indemnity insurance? That insurance, if that person sues you and it ends up in court or whether by negotiations or whatever, then that indemnity would kick in to, of course, it's a payout by the insurance to compensate the client.
Okay.
Yes.
Wow. So does that really happen in Jamaica?
Please do not put me on the spot, ma'am. I'm being honest. Okay, there are some famous instances where, for example, was it Sandals White House? And that one comes to mind because it started off at a couple hundred million US, and before you know it, by the time the project is done, the cost is doubled.
Wow.
We see it in the government sector daily. A project starts off at X dollars, and before you know it, the price is doubled. And to be frank with you, Miss Karen, I have not heard of anybody being sued or anybody being held professionally liable. But I'm saying this on this forum, so at least people will know, hey, if it's worth it to you, I need to see your insurance.
Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
And in the converse, where like now, where prices are very erratic, and you did your projection or your estimate about say about 6 months ago, but in light of what is happening in the economy right now, the prices have really gone out of whack, and hence your report would have somewhat been obsolete. How does the client, or what recourse? I know it's not quite your fault, it's a economic situation, but how do you know, more or less reach a compromise in that regard?
Okay, that's an excellent question. So you negotiate a contract a year ago, and usually, it's, usually some, especially in the government sector, you have tenders going out or bids going out. I see somebody posted up a question here. Do you have any info on the Shooters Hill development by HAJ? No, I
Yeah.
don't.
No, I think that right. I'll respond to them a little later. So
Right.
no, that
But,
you may not.
I'm just drawing on that then, say for reference.
Okay.
So the government, and again, I'll just use the term government, wants to do a development, housing development. And it's tendered, say, a year ago. Now, a year later, the contract is about to start. You go through all your contract, checks and balances and ensure that yes, it was tendered a year ago, but, you usually get a written permission from a written agreement from the contractor that you're still willing to stick by your tender submitted a year ago. However, what is essential there now, and this is where good advice from your quantity surveyor comes in, even to a contractor bidding a project, you have to ensure that you include in that bid process what we call the basic price list of materials. What does that mean? It means last year, this bid that I submitted, I was getting cement at $1,000 per bag. I was getting lumber at $150 per footboard measure. I was getting steel at $100,000 per ton.
Yes.
And ensure that you put every single item in that document.
Okay.
I'm getting asphaltic concrete to pave my road at $15,000 per ton. I'm getting marl at $3,000 per cubic yard. Every single item should be included in that basic price list of materials. So, okay, that happened a year ago. You have your basic price list. Now I'm ready to start. What it means is that under the contract, I'm entitled to the price difference. So a year ago, I'm saying my bid price included steel at $100,000 per ton. Today it is $130,000. So of course there's a net difference of $30,000. So you claim that against the amount of steel that you purchase, and you get your escalation on that. No, it's on.
Did you say you claim?
Yes, in doing.
Claim from whom?
Okay, the client.
Okay.
Because what the client has his or her quantity surveyor that's monitoring on their behalf, and the contractor has his or her quantity survey as well.
Mhm.
So the contractor in doing his work and presenting a claim for payment to the contractor, he would have made reference to the material escalation, which means you'd have to submit your original invoices against, and that would establish what your increase is against what your bid price was. So it's a very excellent question. And again, not many contractors, not all contractors, you'll be surprised. Not all contractors are aware of that and insist on doing it the proper way. And that, of course,
Okay.
can lead to bankruptcy, especially in today's
Yes. Economy.
economy. Yes.
Mhm. And what if is it a requirement for the quantity surveyor to actually do a site visit prior to, or does he go by the plan and that is enough? Is that
I would say it's highly recommended that you do a site visit. A picture tells 1,000 words.
Mhm.
You can get your drawings and you can get your topographical survey done, and it can show you your different elevation and your different levels.
Mhm.
You might even get a soil test report
Yes.
to say that 2 feet down it's solid rock, or 10 feet down it's solid rock, depending on the nature of the construction. But
Mhm.
it is always advisable to do a site visit. You just might see something there that's not on the drawing, and it can
Exactly.
make a whole lot of difference. Major, major difference.
So in that case where they under where the builder underestimate the cost because the QS didn't go and do a site visit, and the client is of the opinion, they give the client a certain price to do the renovation or the construction, and then when push come to shove, or in a renovation, for example, the say for instance the floor, um they did not take into consideration that the floor would have to be dug up and then to see what's happening there. So it was just like as you said, a picture, looking at a picture and not doing a site visit. Whose liability is that? Because the client was not aware. You got a particular figure that you're working with. You would have probably applied for your loan from your financial institution, and at the end of the day you are left whole in the bag. Suppose the client is unable to come up with the shortfall to complete this project. Whose liability is that?
That's a good question. I don't think I can sit here and pinpoint exactly who. There are so many circumstances to look at. Did the architect pick up all the necessary information, all the relevant data that was supposed to be picked up? Did the engineer pick up the relevant data as well? These are questions. And of course, did the quantity surveyor, based on the information provided, was he or she informed enough based on the drawings as to what was there? So again, it is essential, do a site visit. Also, remember, don't forget about that professional indemnity insurance.
The indemnity insurance.
Yes, in the event that you're undervalued, that might have to be to kick in. And bear in mind, architects, engineers, all professionals within the industry should carry that insurance. But as it
Okay.
stands in Jamaica now, people tend to get away with a lot of things. Yeah.
Well, I guess this is an eye opener to those of us who will want to undertake projects, that we should always ask that question just to safeguard ourselves. And it is really, 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 really key that we know that,
Yes.
that what to do in instances like those. So in the event that you said you definitely would not know who would be responsible or be liable, because you would have to take into consideration. But if the actual all right, let me give you the scenario. So if the quantity surveyor did not do his site visit as you recommend, but there is a gap, a real huge gap, and it's not a case wherein the prices are necessarily the prices are stable, I should say. So prices are stable. Prices are not erratic like now, where the prices are erratic. And you're given a particular cost to work with. You would have submitted that to your financial institution. They provided a process it, and they disperse the funds to you in the tranches. And when it comes to the final tranche, you still find out that you are not near completion. So it still boils down to, you're saying it still boils down to who has the insurance to do that compensation.
Well, yes, and I must say, in instances like budgeting and controlling your budget, great weight is on the quantity surveyor's back, shoulders. Great weight. Because of course you have to monitor your payments on a regular contract. You have to ensure that you don't overpay the contractor. And not to veer from what I'm saying here, but in too many instances we have heard of overseas clients. Jamaica.
That's a terrible sore point.
I am sure you in your line of business
terrible sore point
come across them every day. What's happening in that instance is that people overseas, they send their money to a contractor who was recommended by some friend or some cousin or somebody who knows somebody. No references, nothing. Doesn't even if the person have an office, nothing about this person, and next thing you know, the person would have received $7-8 million. Like one client I have now, she was overseas. She paid to date $7 million. And I'll be frank with you, when she hired me and I went there, I did not know where to start. When she started showing me what the contractor did, I was at a loss.
Wow.
The only question to her, so in paying this money, who advised you? Did you see a picture? I mean, in these days, I guess, of social media, live videos and so on.
Right.
You use something to help to cushion that.
Exactly. I have a previous video that I did, and that was something that I recommended, that you have somebody on the ground to do your periodic stages of the take pictures and videos of the different stages of the project.
Yes, ma'am. And don't forget, do not start that construction unless you have a contract in place. Put a detailed contract. Okay, what am I getting for my money? And within that contract, you detail out your stage payments.
Yes.
Typically, you say, okay, I'm going to mobilize a contractor to do X.
Yes.
And let me say this. People generally just give a mobilization and say, hey, go start working. I am going to say to any client of mine, no.
Yes.
Let's tie the mobilization to specifics.
Yes.
Too many times a contractor gets that mobilization, the first thing he does, he go buys a Range Rover. Or some fancy vehicle or something. Yes?
Yes.
So what you do, you tie that mobilization to specifics.
Yes.
So you say, well, okay, this mobilization I'm giving you is to pre-purchase my material so that I can possibly save on escalation.
Yes.
It's my money that you're spending on my project. It doesn't become your
Yes.
money until after you have delivered my project to me and what's left is
Yes.
yours.
Yes.
So I want you to spend my mobilization in this way. I want so much to go towards my materials pre-purchasing. Yes, you can use a certain amount to mobilize your equipment and so on to get started. But I want the majority of my money to benefit me. To pre-purchase my materials again to cushion inflation.
Right.
Too many times that's a loophole that contractors use, and again they use that money and they go splurge.
Yeah, yeah.
Yes,
Yeah.
and before you know it.
And that is why, I mean, I saw the need for this discourse with you to, very good tips, as to how to approach construction, because a lot of persons would love to build, but because of the bad experiences that other persons have had, they stay far from construction, because as far as they're concerned, everybody's the same, when it's just a matter of having the know-how how to approach it. So basically, this is we're happy that you were able to share those tips with us. And what advice would you give to someone who wishes to enter the quantity surveyors field? I don't get the impression that there are quite a lot of persons in the field, but you can tell me.
Well, I must say this, in going in even in entering CAS, and this was like back in 1977, we were told from then that there is a shortage of quantity surveyors in Jamaica. And what, 45 years later, I'm still told there's a shortage in Jamaica. I get calls and I'm like, man, I didn't know you guys existed. I had to search and check just to find a quantity surveyor, and then you have to explain to them what services the quantity surveyor performs.
Yes, yes.
But to backtrack, what was your question again? The specific, let me.
Yes, so what advice would you give someone who wishes to enter the field?
I would say it is highly, let me say, competitive. It is a profession that brings about, great respect. And have a love for numbers. Have a love for numbers, because you're going to sleep and dream numbers. Yes, you are going to sleep and dream numbers, and some nights you're going to have nightmares. Did I make a mistake?
And of course, young people don't want to just see numbers. They want to see the number in their pockets as well. So is this a well-paid field?
Yes, it is. Yes, because pretty much, and I have to be very careful in saying this, because some clients, when I advise them, okay, pretty much the fees are based on a percentage of your construction cost.
Yes.
Of course, a client will say, yes, so then the higher you push the value, the more money you will make. People will say that, but it doesn't work that way, because for one, you put your project out to tender, to bid, and you accept. And let me say this, I'm speaking about bid. I would not recommend to any client that you necessarily accept the lowest tender, because the lowest tender can sometimes be way too low to deliver.
Yes.
And I've seen it happen too many times. Contractor insists, hey, I can deliver for this price. And you show them, hey, you have concrete priced here at 20,000 per cubic meter. The going rate for concrete is 35,000. How can you deliver? No, man, we know we can't do it, man. Don't worry yourself. And of course, it becomes misery for the professional team.
Yes.
And especially the client.
Yes, yes.
Because at some point you're going to hear, well, okay, then. And, some contractors do that deliberately. And I'm not just saying, not casting aspersions of people who are unscrupulous. But some will go in knowingly low And,
I'm aware of that.
and from day one, they start looking for loopholes.
Yes, yes, yes.
How can I make up for this shortfall from day one?
Yeah. So should we think then that, for example, you put out your project for tender, and boy, somebody's own, when you look at all the tenders that come in, somebody's own is like, you probably get one for 15, you probably get one for 10, you probably get one for 8. Um, hmm. How do you strike the balance to say, or what tips can you give the consumer or the client then to say, to guide them in accepting one that is more realistic to work with?
Okay. So your quantity surveyor would have done a costing, an independent costing, and submitted that to you. And in doing your tenders now, typically you look at the one that's closest to the, and they would refer to it as the engineer's estimate. We use the term engineers because it's a generic term in the business.
Let me just ask you a question just to understand it a little better. Is it that the client, I know that sometimes some builders have their own QS. So are you recommending that the client should get the QS instead of getting one built-in with the builder or the contractor? How do we differentiate?
Oh yes, you always, as a client, you always try to find that independent QS who answers to you. In saying a QS that answers to you, see, a quantity surveyor has to strike a balance. Even though the client hired you as their quantity surveyor, your professional ethics should also tell you that you must strike that balance between representing your client and ensuring that the contractor gets justice in the process.
Yeah.
You're not here to, beat down the contractor to the client's interest or to the client's benefit. No. You always try to strike that balance to ensure that, you try to split justice as best as you can then.
Right.
And it's a discussion I'll have with junior QSs in the business. Hey, yes, the contractor hires you. It doesn't necessarily mean that, you try to be slick and you go find all the loopholes to do this and, bring contracts in disrepute. That happens too many times and they can be avoided.
Okay.
Up to what you said about accepting a bid. Some agencies will tell you just straight out the bat, if you are more than, say, 15% below the engineer's estimate,
yes,
you're automatically disqualified.
Okay.
So they don't go and try to split hairs and, you don't need to convince me that, hey, you're 15%, you're 20% lower, you're going to convince me that you can pull through. So that eliminates a lot of headache for the tender reporting process. So there's a process when you put a project out to tender on behalf of a client, you get 5-6 tenders. Now you have to go through and do a report on each and every one of those bids. You do a mathematical check. You check their price list of materials, ensure that their material prices are good or current. But some contractors again will, and I'm not saying this to bash a contractor, but some will deliberately quote their procurement of materials low, in order to bid low, and then on the tail end now, the client now has to pay that difference. What do I mean by that? Cement on the market might be at $1,000 per bag. The contractor disingenuously slips in an $800 per bag price.
Oh. And suppose I pick it up as a consumer and him said to me, say, boy, that is my contractor's price.
Well, again, you are expected to have a professional quantity surveyor to advise you in checking that tender. Hey, contractor X is quoting cement at 800 per bag. The current market price is $1,000. So of course, sometimes that is reasons for even disqualification
Okay.
to that particular contract.
All right. So we have come to the end of episode 12 with our very knowledgeable quantity surveyor, Mr. Fitzroy Donaldson. And my, haven't I learned quite a bit? I mean, today, I mean, didn't know anything about, asking the contractor or asking the QS if he has insurance and all of that. So from now on, I mean, I am knowledgeable about that, and even if I myself might not undertake any building per se, but at least I can advise somebody, that this is the route, or I can send them this video and say, hey, listen to the professional and be guided. Thank you so much for coming. Thank you so much for sharing. And, do have a blessed week, Mr. Donaldson.
And I thank you much, Mrs. Cole. The pleasure was mine. I'm always willing and able to share the knowledge. And I encourage young ones, don't be afraid of the profession. Get involved.
All right. Thank you so much again. All right. So, everyone, we have just come to the end of the broadcast. And of course, you're always advised or you're asked, please, to subscribe, to share, to like the broadcast, and like the channel and share the broadcast. So thank you once again for coming or for viewing, and all the very best. And as we look forward to what's in store on episode 13. Have a blessed weekend now.